This is Mark Guerrero. Welcome to East L.A. Music Stories. My guest today is Jimi Seville, uh, a fantastic keyboard player and musician. And he's played with Yaqui, who I've interviewed several people from Yaqui on this show. Has backed up Cannibal Garcia, Frankie Cannibal Garcia, Ricci Martin, Dean Martin's son. He's been in some great tribute bands. And back in the early days, he was in three East LA bands, Yesterday's Dream, The Majestics, and Our Generation. And he and I have a history together. He recorded on an EP I made in 1988, and he did some co-production work on it. And we've done concerts together and some recording sessions. So before we get into your history, let's talk about a few of the recent events that have happened. One of them that is near and dear to my heart was the concert we did on this September 6th, 2025, at La Plaza de Cultura y Artes. And it was a concert in conjunction with the exhibit there called A Great Day in East LA. I was a co-curator on that wonderful exhibit on the history of East LA music from the 50s to the present. And we were on the bill with Tierra. And I had a ton of people backing me up. I had surviving members of my first band, Mark and the Escorts. I had a couple of surviving members of my early 70s band, Tango. And then I had a few of the guys from Yaqui, including Jimi, and some other great musicians like Sal Rodriguez of War, Fredo Ortiz of Los Lobos on percussion, both of them. Steve Alanis, my favorite sax player. And we had background vocalist Greg Esparza, Nancy Sanchez. So it was a tremendous concert. And I got to do a show, an hour show, reflecting my entire recording career. Did a couple of Mark and the Escorts songs, a couple of tango songs, some of my later Latin rock songs, a couple of my dad's songs. And it was a fantastic experience. So what are some of your memories of that show?
You know what I love more than anything with the camaraderie with everybody. You know what I
Wasn't
mean?
it?
That's what I love about the musical community, man. It's a brotherhood. You know what I mean? There's really like no egos involved and nothing like that. It's just, it's like, let's all do this together. You know what I mean? And it's for a common cause. And in that case, I love that because, like you said, a great day in East LA. I thought it was a great celebration of what we all grew up in.
Absolutely, yeah. What was so cool about it is, again, because we're talented musicians, but also extremely experienced by this point. We've evolved to a point where during rehearsals, there was no squabbles or disagreements, and everybody just was working for the good of the songs and the cause. And if I made suggestions or wanted certain things, nobody hassled me about it. Everybody tried things, and it went very smoothly with everybody. Did you find that to be true?
Well, like you said, it's because of experience. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
The whole idea, I've been musical director for a lot of different artists. And for me, the whole thing is about supporting that artist. They're the ones who are in charge. You know what I mean? They're the ones who call the shots. If I'm in charge, that's a different story. But if you're the artist, we're going to back you up and, do what you want.
Mhm.
Something that just musically is not working, I would mention to you, hey, Mark, maybe, we should try
Right.
blah, 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 blah. Everybody was very respectful about it. And that's what I really liked about it.
And at this stage of our careers, we have a no assholes policy. You don't hire, I don't care how good the musician is, if he's hard to work with or temperamental or has a big ego, it's not worth it because music's supposed to be a joyful thing to play music.
Why we all got into it.
That's right. Yeah. So we had a ball on that show and it went over great. It was a
Great audience,
great response.
great response, great, the reception, from the audience. It was great, man. Seeing them dancing around and just swaying, as we're doing, each one of your songs. And I'm going, man, this is really cool.
And the videos are up on YouTube.
Band was sounding great. And
Yeah, great band. And then we did a thing very recently. It was on, I believe, November 15th of this year, 2025. We did a fundraiser for Nancy Sanchez.
That was fun.
who was one of our singers on our show, but she's a great talent in her own right, singer-songwriter, musician, uh, really wonderful lady. And six guys backed me up. You know, I think on the other show we had 13 people, but this one was the core group. And it was you on keyboard, John Valenzuela on guitar,
Art Sanchez.
Art Sanchez on bass, Ray Rodriguez on drums, um, Victor Cisneros from Tierra on sax, and Dale Villavicencio from Tierra Legacy on percussion. And it was a kick-ass little band. And we did a half-hour set. We did kind of the best of our previous concert.
Yeah, yeah.
And it went really well. And what was really fun was doing that song Mockingbird, me and Nancy Sanchez doing the duet.
That's nice.
What'd you think?
That was fun.
Yeah.
You know, and then and then I liked, Los Rock Angels. You know, they were
Right.
great band too. You know, I really enjoyed them. You know, and again, the camaraderie. You know?
Yeah, the camaraderie with everybody, all the Rock Angels guys,
No egos.
Sanchez,
No, I'm better than you. That kind of crap.
no competition. Raul Pacheco of Ozo Motley was playing.
Yeah, I mean, and everybody was there just to help out. You know, that's what we were all doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a really brotherhood and sisterhood kind of a vibe.
It was, and like I said, everybody, just respect each other. You know, do your job.
Right. Hey, and the finale was fun, right? We did Wooly Bully, followed by Land of a Thousand Dances,
That was a
and
blast.
everybody got to solo, and it was a blast.
And I was watching the audience, and they're just all singing along. That's what really made it really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, when you see the audience really participating, man, that's when you're hitting a nerve. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Nancy's group, Las Choriceras, performed, and they're a great
Great. I was
little
great.
four-piece mariachi. Every one of them sings and plays fantastically. And so it was a really great lineup. Had a couple of comedians.
It was a great show. I really enjoyed it.
And the MC was Richard Montoya from Culture Clash. Yeah, it was a great night. So those are our two very current things. Also, we've recently been recording some things for Art Brambilla, my former producer from the 70s. And he used to produce Tierra originally
And
and
yeah,
Yaqui. And we did a new version of Land of a Thousand Dances. And we did a song called The Stars of East L.A. And it came out really great, I thought.
I thought it came out really nice. You know,
Yeah.
it was his genius. You know, it was his brainchild. You know,
Right. Yeah, he wrote the song. Good song. Paying tribute to the East LA musicians of the 60s and early 70s. Yeah. So anyway, so that's kind of what we've been doing lately. Let's talk about what got you interested in music and how did you pick the keyboard?
well, I fell into music by a fluke. You know, because I was like, let's see, seventh grade, and I love music. You know, and sometimes I would go hear some live bands, like I would go see you guys. You know, from time to time. You know, and some of the other local bands, but I had no aspirations whatsoever to play music, right? And but one day they said, we had to take an elective at Stevenson Junior High School, and one of them was piano, right? And so at that time, all I really cared about was, having a high GPA, So I figured that'll be an easy A. I could do that, right? I figured, I could do that, right? And so, but, after about 2 months into the program, my teacher said, "Hey, you have an affinity for this." Really? Because I had no clue, but I knew that in my mom's family, though, they were very musical. I had an uncle who did play piano, and so I guess I must have got it from there somewhere. And so then, he said, "I suggest to you, you get a real piano teacher." So my mom got me a piano teacher, and then I hated the lessons because I wanted to play in a band. I didn't want to be going dun 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 dun.
So how old were you at that time when you started the lessons?
13. And so, I hated it, right? But I went to the lessons and stuff. But then, like I told you, I had told you before, neighborhood friends would just, say, "Hey, let's put a band together. I play guitar, so we put 3 or 4 songs together, like 5 songs together or something like that. And we did our first gig at at Laguna Park. Right? And you told me you played there.
Yeah, that was our first gig too in '63. And
You know,
yours was what, '67 or
yeah,
so?
mine was in '67. You know, and they paid us $5, man, each.
Each. That's big money at that time.
And we weren't that good. You know, so then shortly after that, a neighbor friend of mine, his name was Ernie Verdeen, guitar player, and he said, "Hey, I just joined this band called Yesterday's Dream," right? And they had been around since '67, but you know they hadn't really done that much yet. So Ernie, you know, said, "And I want to bring you in as the keyboard player." Really, me? It was like, you know, because when you're taking piano lesson, you're just learning like arpeggios, da 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 da, right? And so you don't really learn chords, what's called block chords, right? So he was teaching me that, you know, a little piano. So he goes, "This is an A, this is a C, this is a D." Johnny Hinojos, who was the leader of Yesterday's Dream and still is, they still around after 57 years now, 58 years, I think. And they're still playing around the area, you know, the East L.A. area and stuff. And so, you know, he brought me in. Johnny said, "Okay, let's give him a shot." You know, so he gave me a shot, man. So I always tell Johnny I'm really grateful because he was the first one to give him a shot.
That was your first real band, good band.
Yeah, 15 years old.
At the time, where were you living in East LA?
Right by Stevenson Junior High School.
And you had immigrated from Nicaragua as a kid, right? With your
Yeah,
mom.
in 1959, we immigrated.
And how old were you when you got here?
6 going on 7.
So at that time, you just spoke Spanish.
Yeah, pure Spanish. But what really helped me was that I had this one teacher. She felt sorry for me because all the kids were making fun of me, right? This was we lived in West LA. And so she asked my mom, she said, "I'd like to keep him after school every day and teach him English." And so within 6 months, she had me speaking English.
Wow.
And my accent had disappeared already. Believe me, I am so eternally grateful to her, Mark. You know, her name was Miss Richardson, and she was gorgeous.
Oh.
That's when I fell in love with blondes.
Mhm. So what were some of the venues you played with Yesterday's Dream?
The Kennedy Hall, I remember that. The Roger Young, remember the Roger Young?
Oh, yeah.
The El Monte Legion Stadium,
Wow.
Montebello Ballroom, I remember that. So many places. You know, it's hard to keep.
Did you do one of the rock and roll shows at East LA College?
No, we did the Battle of the Bands
Was it at East LA College?
at East L.A.
I
College.
remember, and you guys won, right?
Yesterday's Dream won the first place. I had left already.
Okay.
Then when I was with the Majestics, they won the second place.
So let's talk about the Majestics. That was the second band.
Yeah, that was my second band after I left Yesterday's Dream.
When you had mentioned that with Yesterday's Dream, they had a kind of a variety of material. It was,
Yeah, more of the pop vein,
yeah.
pop of the day,
Whereas the Majestics were more R&B.
R&B, soul, Stax, Otis Redding, Motown, that kind of stuff. And Hank Castro was the lead singer at the time.
And,
That's when Hank and I met. We were 16 years old.
and Hank currently is a singer for the Midnighters.
Yeah, I mean, Hank and I had been in a dozen bands together.
Who else was in the Majestics? Anybody else I might know?
Um, did you ever meet Ed Contreras?
Oh, yes. That later became a producer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he was our sax player in the Majestics. I had a production company together for a while. When he was married to Jerry.
Geree. Anything else you might mention about the Majestics? Did they do the similar kind of venues?
Well, what was cool about the Majestics, that's why I joined it because, when I was in Yesterday's Dream, it was a fun band, like I said, and they gave me my first shot, and I was really grateful for it. But they started having this insatiable hunger for me to do other things. You know what I mean? It wasn't nothing personal or nothing like that. Not that I didn't like the guys or I didn't like what they were doing. Just something else in me just burning, saying, then I met, the drummer was going to Salesian, because I went to Salesian High School. I was going to Salesian High School, and he told me, "Oh, you come down and check out my band." So I went to go check them out one time, because they were mostly playing in South Central area. And so I went and checked them out and go, oh man, I dig these guys. I dig what these guys are doing. And you know, they had like a five-piece horn section,
Wow.
and they were doing some really cool stuff. You know, like Can't Turn You Loose, by Otis Redding. Five horns and everything. I'm going, oh man, I want to play with that. Right?
Now, were they mainly Latinos, or did they have some black guys in the group? Or
Yeah, it was an integrated group.
nice,
A couple of white guys, mostly Latinos, and a couple of black guys.
cool.
So it was a great education for me,
Yeah.
that band, so we were playing, like I told you, out in the South Central area mostly, and so we were playing for a lot of black events and things like that.
So you didn't play too much of the East LA circuit?
We did once in a while, but mostly it was in that area,
So I wonder, was there another Majestics in East LA, a separate band? Because I've heard the name before, an East Side band. Maybe I'm wrong.
They might have been, but these were called the Majestics, like the Midnighters,
Of course, everybody copied the Midnight.
Yeah, everybody was doing V at that time, right?
Right.
So, they were fun, and I was with them for about maybe 2 years.
And then you went to the next group.
Same thing, we did a gig at Lord's, and Our Generation was playing, right? And they had a bass player, singer named Alex Salazar, who was amazing, man. He could sing anything, and I'm going, I want to play with that guy. And so it's funny, I heard that their keyboard player had left, and they were looking for a keyboard. So I went in and auditioned, and it's funny because Alex, he goes, at that time I had a fro. He goes, you see that keyboard player with the fro? He would be great for our band, right? And so then I went to go audition, and as soon as I walked in, he goes, you're the one we saw over at Lord's. And so I was in. I didn't even have to play. I didn't even have to audition.
Cool.
So that was cool because with that one, same thing with the Midnight. The Midnight with the Majestics. Both of them, we would do the Teenage Fair every year, and that was a cool gig. With Wolfman Jack. He was the MC. And here they are, the Majestics. And it was really cool.
And their repertoire was a little different from the other two bands, right?
Oh yeah, they were rock. The rock of the day. CCR, Steppenwolf, Deep Purple. That kind of stuff.
So that was a nice education for you, those three bands.
Those three bands pretty much made my career, man. From there on, just opened it up wide for me because I could work in any one of those genres.
It set the table for you stylistically.
It did. It really did. That's why I could play rock, I could play R&B, I could play jazz, I could play all the different things that country, stuff like that.
And with that band, you played Gazaris, right?
Yeah, we were one of the house bands there.
Hollywood, the Sunset Strip.
Yeah, we thought we were making it. We were like 17, 18 years old.
Like we talked about the money. How much did you guys get paid?
Yeah, I don't remember what we got paid, but
Well, like I told you, when we played, you played there what year?
71.
Well, my band played there in '68, and we played 6 nights, alternating with another band. And for the whole week, the whole band got $250, $50 each for the whole week. But they would say, well, you're playing downtown, baby. You're playing on the Sunset Strip. You're going to get all this notice, and people are going to see you. And but
Yeah,
as
but
you know, later on, bands had to pay to play. And I think they still do have to pay to play.
I felt sorry for those bands, man. One time we were doing Madam Wong's, right? We were headlining. This was with Cannibal and the Headhunters. We were headlining along with Billy Vera and the Beaters,
Mhm.
right? But there were two opening bands, and I felt sorry for them, man, because they had to pay to play. I felt so bad for them. We didn't have to because we were one of the headliners, but
The other thing that they do is they don't pay you, but they make you either sell tickets yourself, or you have to guarantee that you're going to bring in, say, 100 people, and if you don't, you won't come back.
oh yeah, I play for a lot of independent artists, like at the Coach House, right? So I'll name my price of what they're going to pay me, but they, pretty much have to sell those tickets. They pay me what I quoted them. So I don't have to worry about that, but I feel sorry for them because they have to sell at least 50 tickets, to try to break even.
So in the early 70s, um, during the time when you were backing up Frankie Cannibal Garcia, you were in a band that for a while was known as Shaky Bone. Was that before you joined Yaqui?
After, yeah.
It was after.
Yeah, after we came back from Canada.
Okay. So let's talk about Yaqui first. So how did you wind up joining Yaqui? Now, Yaqui made an album in 1972, and they were part of Art Bambilla's stable of artists. It was me. I was on Capitol Records. Tierra was on 20th Century. Yaqui was on Playboy Records. And they made a great album. But you joined the band after the album, correct?
After the album, yeah.
And how did you meet them and how'd you get in?
Well, you know what? I had seen Yaqui like a year before that. Remember, I think you might have been on that show too. There was something at Lincoln Heights, and it was like a big show, and Tierra was on it, and Yaqui was on it.
I don't remember that one. You weren't at the Cal State LA show we did in 1972?
Maybe that's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, because it was that one was Tierra, El Chicano, Elijah, me. We didn't go to that show.
And we was Yaqui on it too?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the one I saw them.
Oh yeah, it was a great showcase, Cal State LA.
So, so I had seen them. So then, a year goes by and I was playing with this band called Baby Brother, which was a very popular, dance band around, we had that house gig at the King's Table in Pico Rivera, right? And so then, I had, same thing, I had gotten wind that the Yaqui was losing their keyboard player, Larry was leaving, and I liked them, because when I saw them, of all the bands that I saw at that show, I'm going, I like those guys, I'm going, I could play with those cats, right? And so then Baby Brother had moved to another place, and now Yaqui was at the King's Table,
Oh wow.
and so I went and introduced myself one day, one of my off nights, and talked to them, met Ronnie. Ronnie was the first one I met.
Ronnie Reyes.
Yeah, and so we struck it right away. We're just talking about different people we knew and stuff like that.
Now was Larry Cronin playing that night still? He was still in the band on the keyboard?
Larry had left already, so I just got on the B3 and started playing. Okay?
Whoa.
So we did some Allman Brothers thing, and instantly like I say, yeah, man, you want to join us? And I'd love to, So I gave my notice to the other band,
So then what happened next with Yaqui?
So we were working, we were doing the house gig at the King's Table again. It's funny because Ronnie started calling me the Phantom of the King's Table.
And where was the King's Table?
In Pico Rivera,
Okay.
right off of Rosemead and Washington, I think. It was a happening place, at that time. This was like like 71, 72, 73, around there. And so then, we were doing the gig at the King's Table, but the guys were working on the second album. George had been writing some new material and really good.
Were they still with a label, or at that point they didn't have a label?
No, Warner's was interested in us at that time, and so that's why we were working on the second album, because there was a good shot we could get a Warner Brothers deal. And we were working on it. George had written some great stuff, and Ronnie and I instantly clicked, and we started writing some things together. So then I started contributing on the writing end, and so it was coming together really nice, man. But
And you're talking about George Ochoa.
yeah, George Ochoa, yeah, and Eddie Serrano.
Eddie Serrano. And so the deal did not come through as it turned out.
No, we were still working on the album, and so we never finished the album, because at that point, Cannibal, who I had worked with before when I was younger, and the guys knew him already. He had, he made us an offer we couldn't refuse, kind of thing.
Okay. Okay, so before you move on, tell me about when you played with him when you were younger.
I met Frankie when I was 18 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
Little Ray had hooked me up with him. And I met Little Ray through Bobby Zarate. I had told you about Bobby Z. He goes by Bobby Z now, right? You know that it's all part of the same, clique and succession that we
So
all.
did you do some shows with him at that point too?
With Frankie, I did a couple of them at that point. He was trying to get it going, but he couldn't really get it going. And I kind of lost interest, so I moved on. And I think that's when I moved to the Bay Area for a while.
When you went to the Bay Area, tell that Neil Schon story.
Oh yeah, my ex was going to San Jose State, so I moved up there with her, and she knew a lot of the musicians from around the Bay Area, so she got me hooked up with a band called Batista. The guitar player was Larry Batista, great guitar player, and so through him they knew Neil Schon.
Yeah, I mispronounced his name earlier. It's Neil Schon. I said Schon.
Neil
Neil
Schon, yeah,
Schon, who was in Santana at the time, or
yeah,
he
he
had
was
been in.
at Santana at the time, yeah.
Okay.
So somehow he got a tape of me and he liked my playing, so he wanted to meet with me. And so we met at a place called Prune Music in Mill Valley. And he told me what he wanted to do. He was getting tired doing the Santana thing and he wanted to do his own thing, right? And so we talked about it. He even gave us a ride in his Maserati.
Ooh,
It was so cool, man. I still remember it to this day. Think about it. He was like my age at that time, so like 19 or 20, and he already had a Maserati. Think about that.
and you did a couple of rehearsals?
Yeah, we did. And that's what I was telling. I told you earlier that the original drummer was Gregor Rico from Sly and the Family Stone.
Hmm.
And Ross Valerie, who ended up the bass player, was Journey, and my friend Larry on guitar, myself on keys, Neil. They didn't have a singer yet. They were just kicking around some ideas and see what we could come up with and stuff like that. But then that was maybe about 2-3 months later. Neil says I got to go out with Santana. He had like a 6-month tour, world tour that he had to fulfill his contract before he could leave because he already had given Carlos his notice that he wanted to do his own thing.
And after that, he formed Journey.
And after that, he formed Journey, man, and I lost out.
With Greg Raleigh.
Yeah, it was Greg Riley, one of my heroes, man.
Yeah, great Hammond player.
He's a monster.
Yeah, he played with Santana too. He's the one that sang Black Magic Woman
More than that, I mean, he was just
and played organ on Oye Como Va and everything else.
brilliant, brilliant keyboard player, man. One of my all-time heroes, that I studied and studied and studied.
Oh, cool. Who were some of your other keyboard heroes?
Um, well, Greg Raleigh, John Lord from Deep Purple, huge fan of his, and I learned I studied his stuff for days, man. Then, my friends of mine would always turn me on to a different, oh, Jimmy, you got to check this out, right? So they would, I got turned on to Jimmy Smith. And
I
then
was
when
going to mention him.
I got turned on to Jimmy Smith, I'm going, oh, man, just bow down,
I'm
right?
not worthy.
Well, yeah, and then then later on I found out that every great keyboard player cites Jimmy Smith as their main
Oh,
influence.
yeah, yeah.
You know, Emerson, Keith Emerson, cites, John Lord cites, Jimmy Smith. Everybody, I've heard, I read things with Greg Raleigh. He said, "Oh yeah, I learned the stuff that I know from Jimmy Smith." You know what I mean?
He also influenced Bobby Espinosa of El Chicano.
Bobby, yeah, I know. I mean, Bobby was, cool. I got to know him pretty well because we used to do a lot of shows together, and he was really cool, man. Because I was like maybe 4 years younger, 5 years younger than him, and I would say, "Hey, Bobby, that thing that you did on Viva Tirada, how'd you do that?" And he showed me, right? And he was really cool, And the same thing, I befriended the keyboard player from Malo, right? His name was Richard Kermody, and we used to do a lot of shows with him. And he was really cool, and I said, "Hey, that thing that you did," and he showed me, "Oh, Jimmy, it goes like this, man," So you can't beat that.
Well, cool, man. So let's get back to Cannibal. So now we're talking, what, like 74, 75?
Yeah, around 74, 75. With Yaqui, like I told you, we were working on the second album, right? But then Frankie came to us and said, "Hey, I got this tour, and I want you guys to do it with
Oh,
me."
yeah, okay, so that was next, right?
Yeah, that was the
Okay.
next thing. And so then, we talked about it, we did it, we put some rehearsals together, put the show together. And so basically he wanted Eddie Serrano and George Ochoa to be the headhunters,
Right.
because they had done that already in New York, right?
Yeah, they'd already been the headhunters in New York before that in '68.
So they weren't really the front singers of Yaqui. They were the headhunters with Cannibal, right? And we were the backup band, and Frankie started calling us the Primitives.
Good name.
Yeah, Cannibal the Headhunters and the Primitives, right?
Oh, is
Backup.
that the thing where you would do a Yaqui show, then you would back him up?
Yeah, and that was what's cool about it. That's why we went for it, because they go, okay, this would be a pretty good thing, and a good way to get our name out there, and good promotion for us, and so. So originally it was just supposed to be we were supposed to do like 6 weeks in Bakersfield that he had this one gig, right? But then exponentially it just kept growing, before you know it. Oh, we just picked up this show in Portland, so we picked up a couple of shows in Portland, this big theater. Oh, we just picked up Seattle. It just kept going more up north, Oh, we just picked up Vancouver. There we were in Vancouver, right? And we were in Vancouver for about a month at a place called Oil Can Harry's, along with Cheech and Chong, and they became really good friends of ours. We used to hang out together every night.
So now, were you with them when they got stranded up there in Canada?
Yeah, yeah, I was there.
Was Cannibal already gone, or did he get stranded for a while too?
No, he was there. We were all there. See, we had gone, like I told you, we had done Oil Can Harry's, and then we went and did Vancouver Island, where you take a ferry to go to Vancouver Island,
Mhm.
right? And it was really cool, and it was a really nice hotel. They put us up there and everything, and we were there for about a week. And we were supposed to have another show somewhere else to go somewhere else. And that's what happened. That's why we got stranded for a couple of weeks, because that show got canceled. So there we were, no money, no nothing, you know, until, we, oh no, I take that back. We had done Vancouver Island first, and we were waiting. We had 2 week period before we could do Oil Can Harry's. So that during those 2 weeks, we were kind of like stranded. But then after that, once we did Oil Can Harry's, we were working again, and then we were able to come back home.
Right, but did you go back or did you stay? Because I remember that you wound up spending some time up there.
When I was out there with Yaqui, with Cannibal, I met this gentleman. His name was Daniel Laflamme. He was a keyboardist, musical director, right? And he had studied with Oscar Peterson, and he was a great keyboard player. I'm like, I want to study with that guy.
So did you, when everybody went home after those gigs you talked about, did you just stay or did you come back and then go back again?
Came back,
Oh, you went back.
He
Okay.
loved our rhythm section. I'm thinking about I'm going to be putting on this show together. You think I would be interested? I love your rhythm section. And
Was
so
that Ray Rodriguez on drums at the time?
Ray Rodriguez on drums, Art Sanchez on bass, and Ronnie on guitar, and myself. And so then, we came back, and then he calls me up. He goes, "Hey, I got this show that this artist named Louis Demas out of Canada. He was originally from Chile, but he was pretty big up in the northern area. He had North Canada area. He had gone up there, and so he was putting a new show together. And so Danielle had been hired as the musical director, and so he wanted our whole rhythm section. But at that time, Ronnie and I didn't want to go. They had their reasons, and so, but Ray and I saw it as an opportunity, and so I said, you know what, I got to try this, I was 22 years old, and I got to try this, man, what do I got to lose? And so then Ray, said he wanted to go, and so we made the arrangements, I went, stuff like that. So then I was working with Danielle, and I was, training with him, but that's why I went, because I wanted to train, to learn how to write, horn charts and, write for bands and for shows, and so he was teaching me that. So, invaluable experience, And so about 6 months down the line, no, maybe 4 months down the line, the artist calls me into his office. He goes, "I want to see you." So I'm thinking, I'm going to get fired, man. What did I do, right? And so he goes, "Did you hear about Danielle?" And I said, "No." He goes, "I just fired him. And you're now the musical director."
Whoa.
Because I had been training, right? And so I'm going, oh, so it's baptism by fire, man. So I go to the band, you gotta bear with me, man. It's like
How long did you continue to play with them at that point?
about another 6 months.
And did Ray stay the whole time?
We raced the whole time.
Nice.
After about a year, I'm going, I was getting homesick. I'm going, yeah, I want to go back to US.
Hmm.
But it was a great experience though, and it taught me a lot and served me well, the education I got from that.
So during that time, you started backing up some name artists, and was that in the 70s when you started playing with people?
Mid 70s, 76, 77, 78, around that area. I just started hooking up with different promoters and then they would hire me to play keys.
So name some of those people you backed up.
Yeah, Martha Reeves, the Vandellas, I worked with her. Shirley Owen from the Shirelles, worked with her. Uh, the Drifters and the Coasters, I've done shows with them. I've been musical director for them.
You mentioned Mitch Ryder, Gary U.S.
Yeah, Mitch
Bonds,
Ryder, we did a few shows with them. That was fun. Gary U.S. Bonds.
and you did some shows with Robert Zapata and Ronnie Reyes, part of
Yeah,
that 30
Robert.
years of rock and roll.
Yeah, Robert and Ronnie got me hooked up with Donnie Brooks, who had that show called 30 Years of Rock and Roll. I think you did it when they were touring, though, right?
Yeah, when I did it, no, that was like in 2010, way, 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 way later,
Yeah, when I did it was like, what year was that? Uh, yeah, around 2000, I guess.
Oh,
Around.
really?
So we would do some shows like in San Francisco, and then do Boise, Idaho, and then go to Montana. He would do like a circuit of about 4 or 5 states.
Mhm.
So it was another great experience, which I'm grateful for.
So in the when was it? Like late 70s, early 80s, you started playing the nightclub dance circuit in LA, doing those top
Yeah,
clubs
like
like the Red Onion.
yeah, 79, I hooked up with a band called Passion out of Orange County. And then we started doing, the Red Onions and Flanagan's Big Daddies. These were all like the high end, we called it the top of the food chain.
Mhm.
Because, there was the burrito circuit, and then we called it the steak and lobster circuit. But you know what? The great experience about that was you literally became a human jukebox. And you
You
learned
know,
how to
and you
play,
learn doing that too by learning the music of other artists. You pick up stuff.
and you had to cover it exactly, not just, jive your way through. I mean, you had to sound like the record.
Right. And of course, there was Black Angus, Carlos O'Brien's, those kind of
All
places.
those, those were the happening places at that time.
So the good news about those places, they paid very well and they were very steady. And you do like Red Onions in various cities. They, rotate you around. However, let's talk about the racism.
Yeah, I saw that.
So, yeah, and I remember hearing from other people I know that played that circuit, especially I know for sure. Well, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to get any litigation, but the idea that you couldn't have more than one Latino in the band or more than one black guy in the band, and people had to change their names. As a matter of fact, you mentioned that you changed your name around that time, right? You were born James
But
Sevilla.
yeah, my manager there said, I'm going to call you Jimmy Poi. I'm going to sell you as a Hawaiian. And I said, if there's a paycheck in it, I don't care. You can call me whatever the heck you want. You know?
Right. And that illustrates another point that you can't be Latino, but you can be Hawaiian, but Hawaiian are they're people of color.
More exotic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's exotic it's somehow, but it's still people of
Yes.
color.
So when I was doing that circuit, I was Jimmy Poi.
Okay, Jimmy Poi. But then you just decided to change Sevilla to Seville.
I did.
And the Jimmy, you spelled it like Jimi Hendrix.
Ever since the Jimi, Hendrix experience album came out, and I saw that, I'm going, okay, I'm going to spell it like that.
Yeah, so you got a really good showbiz name, Jimi Seville, with that spelling of Jimmy. But that served
Yeah,
you
served
well.
me well, Mark.
Yes, it has. But yeah, so there was a lot of that kind of racism. You had to change your name, or you're limited to one Latino, and really horrible stuff. You
It
know,
was part of the game you had to play. You wanted to make that kind of money. You know what I mean?
and it was happening on the Sunset Strip, the same thing, even in the '60s when Pat and Lolly Vasquez, later of Redbone, had to change their name, so they changed it to Lolly and Pat
Vegas.
Vegas.
You know?
Yeah, you had to. And even if you looked Latino, if your name was different, somehow you could pass, you know. But yeah, well, that's the dark underbelly of showbiz, or one of the dark
I
underbellies.
know.
Yeah. So what were you doing in the 90s? Do you remember the 90s? Or is
Yeah,
it a
in
blank spot?
the 80s, I started working for a church as a musical director
Hmm.
here in Los Alamitos, called Conwood Church, and I was the musical director for 5 years.
Hmm.
And then, after that, I started playing for, different churches and things like that. So, that was part of my living. I had stopped playing professionally for a while, and I just started doing, just stopped doing that. And it paid my bills. I mean, it was a steady, weekly paycheck.
All right. Well, talk about when you recorded at Ike and Tina Turner's studio, Ike Turner's studio.
Yeah, Bollock Sounds.
And when was that? That was way early, right?
I was 18 years old. I had a man, whatchamacallit, agent who used to book one of my bands from South Central. And so he goes, "Hey, I'm going to introduce you to my friend Bernie Ross, who was one of the co-producers with Ike on some of the projects, right?" And so check this out, Mark. The thing that really blew me away when I first went to go meet, this was in Hollywood, I went to go meet Bernie Ross. And first thing, he sits me down and he goes, "What makes a hit record?" And I'm going, and I'm thinking, I'm going, well, I'm going to dazzle him with my knowledge, the music, the melody, the rhythm, the lyric. And he goes, "Nope." He goes, "Emotion." He goes, "Emotion is what makes somebody turn on the radio at midnight and start dancing." And you know what? That stuck with me for the rest of my life. One of the greatest lessons I ever gotten.
Yes. You should always play and record with emotion.
Exactly. Like I told you, I carry it with me to this day, man. And so he's the one who introduced me, to Ike, and we started working in his studio, and that's when I got my first experience as recording. I was this dumb little kid. What did I know? So, but it was a great experience.
Well, we were speaking about the 80s. I forgot to mention that's when we met.
Right?
And at the time, you were playing with Ronnie Reyes. And who were some of the other guys in the group you were in at that time?
Jeez, I don't remember that.
Let's see, was it Ray Rodriguez or a different drummer?
I don't think it was Ray.
And didn't you have that singer? Can't think of his name, but he wound up singing on my EP.
Oh, Ryan Lapine.
Yes, was he the lead singer of the band?
Yeah, because he was from ATM when we had ATM.
Okay,
And we could talk about that if you want.
right. Talk about ATM before we get into our project.
Okay, ATM was my brainchild. I had been on the road with a great band called Fantasia, cover band. Geree Gonzalez used to be the lead singer, but then she had left and she had gone with MCA to go do her album,
Right.
right? And Bobby Zarate, Bobby Z, was the keyboard player, and he's the one who recommended me for the gig for Fantasia.
Hmm.
And I already knew Frankie, the drummer. Frankie Martinez was an incredible drummer, one of the greatest drummers that came out of East L.A. Metronome. He was like a clock, man. And he was with Macondo. Remember Macondo?
Oh yeah, that was Max Ubiza's band.
Yeah. So Frankie was the drummer.
Oh,
So then they had him and Charlie Garcia had a band called Fantasia. And so I joined them for a while, and then we were up, like in Sacramento, doing that area up there. But inside of me, I'm going, I want to do my own thing, right? So I came back, and so I contacted Ronnie. Ronnie's always been my partner, Reyes. And so I said, "Ronnie, I got these, I've been writing these new tunes. I want to do da-da-da." And he goes, "Yeah, me too, man." So, so we were in already together. And so then Robert Zapata, who is the drummer and leader of Cannibal and the Headhunters now, was my next door neighbor, literally. We lived in a duplex, and he was my next door neighbor next door. So I told him, and Beto, I think, was playing with Willie Bobo at the time. And so, so I told him, I'm thinking about doing this. He goes, "I'm your drummer." I said, "Okay, bro." Because I didn't want to ask him because I knew he was doing what he was doing, and I didn't want. And so then, I had Richard Rosas, Rick Rosas, and Art were the two choices, that I had to put this thing together with. So then Robert, had done a gig with Rick, and he told him what we were doing, and Rick says, "Tell Jimmy I'm in." So then, this is funny. David Torrez, incredible keyboardist, musician, genius level, absolutely, one of my dearest old friends, and incredible musician that I, very much admire. So him and Beto had done a gig somewhere, and Beto told him, about, yeah, Jimmy's, we're putting this thing together with Jimmy, and same thing. David goes, "Tell Jimmy I'm in." So it was David and me, two really strong keyboard players, man. And then what really blew me away, because everybody just thinks of David, as a Latin jazz guy or jazz guy. He's a rocker.
Oh yeah.
And so he played me. We got together at his place, and he played me some of his music, and it sounded like Styx. I'm going, "Wow, Dave, I had no idea you wrote like that, man." And so, so he was in. So we were working on, it was like the first 6 months, things were starting to come together. Rick had hooked us up with a lot of places out in L.A., so we were rehearsing out there. And then David got the call to go with Poncho Sanchez.
Was this like early 80s you're talking about?
Yeah, like 81.
Yeah. And
So,
of course, Rick was my bass player for years and
yeah, I
years, the
know.
process. Yeah.
Funny how it goes full circle, Mark.
Yeah. And
You know,
David Torres had already been in Tierra, the original Tierra, and later became Poncho Sanchez's music
for
director.
about 25 years,
Yeah.
as musical
This was
director and pianist.
quite a group of guys you had together there.
Yeah, so I mean, it was sounding great already. I mean, when I had cats like that right away, it was just like coming together. We just show them the songs and coming together. So then David got the call, to go with Poncho, and so we gave him our blessing and said, "Bro, you got to take it. It's an incredible opportunity for you. He goes, "Oh man, I hate doing it. David, you got to do it. It's great for you," and I'm glad he did. Because he went on to do some great things. And so he was a great cat. So then. We tried this one singer, he wasn't really working out. And then through a friend of mine who I used to work with, recommended Ronnie LaPine. He's from Cleveland, Ohio. And he came in an audition, man, we're going, this is it. And so then with Rick, he introduced us to John Townsend from the Sanford Townsend Band. So we became good friends with those guys, right? And we were rehearsing in a place called the Alley in North Hollywood.
Yeah, that was a great place. We rehearsed there too.
We had the big sound stage.
Oh, wow.
They gave it to us for almost literally nothing because they liked our band, the owners, right? And so then we became friends, and so then we told Johnny Townsend, we're looking for a producer, right? So he hooked us up with a friend of his named Alex Casanegras, who had engineered all the Loggins and Messina records.
Wow.
Sly and the Family Stones, There's a Riot Going On, Edgar Winter's Road Work. You know what I mean? The list goes on and.
And we might mention that this Sanford Townsend band had the big hit "Smoke from a Distant Fire." Great record.
Great song. And Johnny, one of my favorite all-time voices.
Oh, great singer.
Oh, a great singer, and he still sounds great. As a matter of fact, you know what? He's going to be him and Beto are going to be at NAMM.
NAMM show. I heard about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and Beto's bringing in Johnny Townsend to do some songs with him, so it's going to be really cool.
Nice.
So what's his name? Johnny Townsend hooked us up with Alex Casanegras. His name's Alex Casanegras. He was a Greek Turk guy, right? But he had been with Clive for 25 years, Clive Davis, at CBS Records. So he had the hookups, So then we go, yeah, this guy's going to work out good. And so he taught us a lot, Mark. He taught us how you record, how you make hit records, not just throw songs together. He literally would edit our songs for us and say, play it like this. He got rid of all the fat.
So yes, sir.
He did. He would record us every rehearsal, and he'd chop it up, come back the following week. This is what your song should sound like.
Was that the band that was real close to making a deal with Warner Brothers Records and then it fell through at the end?
No, it was CBS was interested in us because his affiliation with Clive and Geffen Records.
Okay, because there was another band Rick was in that was really close to a Warner deal, so it must have been a different band. But so what happened with the record deals?
Uh, Personal problems, personal drug related problems.
Yes, that's what I thought.
So we'll leave it at that. And
Yeah.
needless to say, the whole thing it never really officially broke up, but it kind of just like dissipated. You know,
Where'd it go?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're so close, man. We were so close. We had done a show at the Palladium, right? And it was a big show, and Bobby Womack was there. He loved our band, and he was really interested in us. I mean, things were looking like they were ready to pop, and then this thing that just kind of like goes to show what drugs would do to a band.
Absolutely. So that was around the time where we met, right after that thing
Yeah,
disappeared.
yeah, yeah. Sorry.
And you were still playing with Ronnie and Lapine, and I don't know who else. But at that time, you were working with Eddie Torrez, the former manager of the Midnighters, and he was going to finance an album for you guys. And then somehow I got involved.
Ronnie's the one who hooked everything up. Ronnie Reyes.
Yeah, did Ronnie hook me up with him?
Yeah, hooked you up with it. I
Yeah,
knew Eddie, from back in the old days when we used to do, the Montebello Ballroom,
right.
and
The
all that
circuit.
stuff. And
Yeah.
those were his dances that he would put on.
So that's when we started working on my EP, and you guys were to back me up. And I forgot even how that happened. I don't remember. I think I wanted Ronnie to play guitar with me, and then the whole band came in, and we did the project. It was called On the Boulevard. It was an EP, and the titles track was On the Boulevard. And there were 4 songs that I wrote. It was On the Boulevard, If I Could Touch Your Life, a big ballad, Latin Quarter, and Room for the Latin in Rock and Roll.
Yeah, I think if we would have been able to get the promotion behind that record, Mark, it would have been huge for you.
Well, it wasn't, we didn't even get distribution.
I know, I know,
It was actually pressed up, really nice cover and a wonderful pressing and great record, but it never got any distribution.
I know. I think, I
So,
think, I think that could have been a big record for you.
yeah, it really felt good.
I remember, and I brought in David Torres, and he played on one song.
Right, he played on Room for the Latin. He did a
Yeah, yeah,
wonderful Montuno.
yeah, yeah. Great
And you
count.
you were playing the basic track on the keyboard. It was great, but he added that Montuno thing. But what it was wonderful, here's this guy who's such a tremendous, talented musician. Played trumpet, played the stick, and great keyboard player. And he was nice, humble, easy to work with, and it really was noticeable to me because there was a bass player who had played on the basic track, and he was not easy to work with.
Oh,
And
yeah, yeah, I
it
remember that.
turns out he was talented, but it turns out he used a bass that wasn't a very good bass on the basic track,
I
and it
remember
just
that.
didn't sound full enough, good enough. So we asked him to come in and do it again with a better bass, like a Fender bass, and he had this attitude, and it was not good. Next thing you know, David Torres, this incredible musician, comes in, and he was like so easy to work with, and just a wonderful guy.
Yeah, from that point on, that's when you and I had started having our association, throughout the
Right.
year.
As a matter of fact, I don't know how it happened, but you became a co-producer with me on it.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. And you played some incredible keyboard parts on all 4 songs. Sure love the way you played on If I Could Touch Your Life. That was a great song. And you
Yeah,
played
you
some
know
nice
what? That
parts.
song should have been a huge hit for you.
And it could have been a hit for others too. I pictured James Ingram doing it. It
Oh,
could have been an
absolutely.
R&B ballad. It could have been a heavy
Absolutely.
metal ballad.
Absolutely. You figure so many people would have covered that song.
Yeah, even it could even be a country ballad probably. Yeah, you can make it
It
into
could have
any.
gone so many different ways.
Yeah.
It could have gone rock ballad. It could have, like what's his name? The guy from Canada,
Oh yeah, Brian Adams.
Brian Adams.
Yeah.
That's what it reminded me of. I'm going. He's the first one I thought of. I'm going, man, this would be a great song for Brian Adams.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah. But it was a great experience, and I'm very proud of that EP. And all 4 songs came out great. Everybody played great. My friend Alex Armstrong sang harmonies on it, and Ron Lapine came in and sang harmonies. And yeah, so it exists and it's out there. It's online. You can see it on the Boulevard EP, Mark Guerrero.
Like I said, if we could have got distribution and promotion on that, that could have been huge. Yeah.
Mhm. That's showbiz, baby. Hooray for Hollywood. But so now let's go back in the time machine. We didn't get to talk about Shaky Bone. So in the early 70s or mid 70s, uh, you were playing at the Mardi Gras, and there was a whole cavalcade of musicians involved.
Well,
Uh,
what happened is when I got back from Canada,
mhm,
right? You know, like I told you, I had done the year in Canada, and after that,
mhm.
when I got back, Frankie and Eddie and what's his name? Duran.
Oh, Tony Duran.
Tony Duran, the thing with Zappa, what was the name of that thing? He had done Ruben and the Jets. And so Tony had been one of the guitar players on that, right?
Right.
And John Valenzuela, your old guitar player,
Yeah.
you know, he was in it. And Shaky Bone.
Oh, you had Shaky Bone. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was Eddie Serrano, you know, Frankie, Cannibal, Tony Duran, and John Valenzuela were, you know, already in the band. So when Eddie found out that I was back in town, you know, I guess they had some keyboard player, and he was leaving. So they asked me, "Hey, you want to join us?" You know, so they offered me the gig right there and then. You know, we had a steady house gig at the Mardi Gras.
Right. Wasn't there a female singer in there singing with Eddie and
Yeah.
Cannibal?
Then Frankie met this gal named Gloria Goldsmith, who had been with Smokey Robinson.
Wow.
You know, from Detroit, right? And she was amazing, man. You know, so we're doing songs, you know, like Shaka Khan stuff. You know, we're doing with Natalie Cole. You know, and she would just be bringing the house down, man. You know, so she was a great addition when we brought her in.
And then you had a few drummers, right? You had Robert Zapata.
We had your drummer, you know.
Yeah, Ernie
Ernie
Hernandez. And you had,
Ernie was
didn't you
great.
have Steve Roybal too for a while?
When I joined the band, Steve Roybal was there. Then he left, and then we brought Ernie in. You know, and Ernie did a tremendous job.
I later played with Steve Roybal and George Ochoa in Redbone with Pat Vegas
That's
a few
funny.
years later in 2003,
It's
4.
funny how it goes.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you
Me
know,
and George Ochoa together again.
it's part of the clique, man. You
Yeah.
know.
And George had been in my band in 1966, the Men from Sound.
I
So
know you had told me that. That's wild, man.
yeah, man, he was only like 16 or something like that. We
So
were.
you know what? We've been talking. You know, George, myself, Art, and Ronnie before he got sick. You know, and Ray. We're looking to try to put something together. We're going to bring you in too. You know, to put a couple. Because I keep telling the guys, I said I want to put a couple of songs together. You know, before anything happens to any one of us and we're not around anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so we've been talking about that, and George's been writing some really cool stuff.
Oh, that'd be great.
And so, we've been in the process. You know, we're waiting for Ronnie to heal, and we're probably going to get back in the studio, you know, and do a Yaqui, you know, a Yaqui project.
So I've had a really good relationship with Yaqui throughout the years, starting in the early 70s, to this day, right?
Yeah, like I tell you, man, it goes full circle, Mark. You know,
Yeah.
it trips me out, man. You know,
Yeah,
and we all stay in contact with each other. You know,
absolutely. And we play great together. It's a natural thing. It just falls together
it
beautifully.
does.
Yeah. So talk about when you were involved with the Doo-Wop Society.
Yeah, I can't remember how I got involved with it. You know, but then before I know it, I became the musical director. I always end up the musical director. I don't know
Yeah,
why.
right.
You know, more than anything, you know, it's one of those situations where nobody's doing it, so somebody's got to do it. You know.
Might as well do it. What time period was that?
That was like 1998 through about 2001, 2002. You know, so I was brought in. So we started backing up, you know, all these doo-wop artists, you know, especially from New York, and it was really cool. And so, you know, it was, who was it? What was their name?
Classic doo-wop guys
And gals.
from the 50s?
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, so one time we were doing this one song, I can't remember the name of the artist right now. And so, you know, we're playing, and I'm playing the string parts, and the leader of the band stops the band and goes, "What was that?" And I said, "Oh, am I playing it wrong?" She goes, "I haven't heard that in 10 years." You know, because I'm one of those that you give me the recording, and what's on that recording, I'm going to play it for you. You know? And so at that point, at that point, there were some string parts that needed to be there, so I learned them, and I played them. And so she was blown away. Same thing happened with Al Wilson. That's how I started working with Al Wilson quite a bit because we were doing show and tell. And I played the string and horn parts, and he's looking like, because he said other keyboard players didn't do that.
Oh, you're great with it. On my EP, you did some beautiful string parts, and on this recent thing with Art Van Billy, you did some wonderful string parts and
I studied
starters.
orchestration and composition and and arranging in college. So that's where I learned all that stuff.
So, right. So, I mean, that's the beautiful thing about music, right? Your education encompasses everything. The bands you played with, the studio stuff, the people that taught you, your mentors, it all blends together to create.
Little Ray's another one that's a great mentor of mine. That took me under his wing. Bobby Z, another one. One of my dearest, oldest friends.
Mhm.
Taught me so much as a young keyboard player.
A lot of talent in East LA, baby.
Well, you know what? When I first started playing in Orange County, and they go, Jimmy, where you from, man? And I said, I'm from East L.A.
Hey, you got to say, hey,
And it came out like that, right?
really?
Yeah.
I know, huh?
And so then, and I said, dude, you don't have a clue of the incredible musicianship that we can have, that has come out of East LA. And so they're, then some of the other cats, would say, oh yeah, man, I heard some of those cats, man, they're bad. And these are all white dudes saying this, right?
Bad meaning good.
Yeah.
You haven't seen the exhibit yet, have you? Did you do the exhibit
Oh
when you
yeah.
went down there?
Yeah, I saw the exhibit. It's
Pretty
beautiful.
impressive, huh? There's nice stuff there.
It's great to see it. I'm bummed that I didn't get in the picture because I was out of town when you guys did it.
Right, right, right.
I went to Salesian High School. Great musicians came out of there, man.
Oh yeah, that's where Willie G and a lot of the Midnighters, the original
Willie
Midnighters.
D, what was his name? Bobby Rodriguez, who went on to win a Grammy. Bobby Loya, Louis from Los Lobos. He was my classmate, man.
Well, then he went to Garfield.
Yeah, and then he went to Garfield. But we were in classes together.
Oh wow. Mike Mercado's another great trumpeter.
Mike Mercado. So all these incredible
But
musicians.
you were a little later than those guys, right?
I was the younger one, yeah. But Louis and I were about the same age. We were in classes together. Same thing with Frankie Martinez, like I told you from Macondo.
Hmm.
We were all in classes together, and that's how we got to know each other. And all through music, man. And that's why I'm so grateful to music because being an only child, I have so many musical brothers and sisters, man.
Yeah, man. So you've had a very nice life. You have a nice family, a wife, and two kids, and your daughter is a fantastic singer. Let's talk about her.
You know what? I'm very proud of her. She she was like 18, I think. She was offered a scholarship to Berkeley in Boston. So she was there, on a vocal scholarship. So she was there for 2 years.
And is Harmony her real name?
Harmony Joy.
But Harmony's her birth name on
Yeah.
YouTube.
Yeah, that was my wife's idea. So she had that name already. Even
It was
before
your
we got
wife's
together,
idea.
she goes, if I ever have a little girl, I'm going to name her Harmony Joy.
Now, is your wife musical?
No. Well, you know what? She saw, when my son was playing bass and and Harmony was singing, she decided she wanted to get involved. So she went to sound school and became our sound person.
Oh, wow.
She was doing great sound because she had a great ear.
Wow. Nice. And you were telling me on the phone earlier that your son is incredibly musically talented, but he decided to go another direction.
Linguistics became his thing. And he got his degree in Japanese from Cal State Long Beach.
And he lives in Japan, right?
And he lives in Osaka, Japan.
Yeah.
And he got married there, and he has I have two Japanese granddaughters.
Wow. So music has been very, very good to you, right?
I believe so. You know what? It's taken me some, places I would never dream of seeing, Mark.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Incredible.
I played so many, the major cities throughout, the United States and Canada, UK, I did, a blues festival in Amsterdam. I played Sydney, you know what I mean? I've done different things throughout Europe, my man, and I'm pinching myself and going, how did this East LA boy get here, man? It's like,
Tell you, man. Talent. Yes. Oh, let's talk about the tribute bands. Very important.
Yeah, for I've been involved with the tribute scene for about close to 20 years now. And just like any other clique, right? And once you get in it, your name is around. And once they know that you could play the stuff, you could do a good job with the thing. So I've done for 8 years. I was touring with a group called Make Adams and the Stones, really excellent Rolling Stones tribute show. And through that, then I got hooked up with different tribute shows. I've done some Santana tribute shows. I've done Linda Ronstadt. I've done Bob Seger. God, I can't even remember. Like so many different things. They just get the call, send me the material, and I'm ready to play it, right? And they know I can play it, and so it's opened up a lot. It's like a whole new door that it opens up for you, and a whole new revenue stream. You know what I mean?
And your Stones tribute band evolved into this Moody Blues thing too, right?
Yeah, I have. So four of the members, during COVID, we all left Make Adams and the Stones, which was the rhythm section. We decided to go on our own, and so we formed our own thing called Bangers, which is a tribute to British rock. We're all in the regalia, of the '60s, and so we cover the Moody Blues and the Who and the Kinks, and all that stuff. And it's all played authentically. It sounds like the record, right? Because that's when you're doing tribute shows, you're literally a human jukebox. That's what people are paying to see. You're a recreation of that artist.
The guitar players have to recreate the exact solos.
Exactly, exact same thing. Sounds, keyboard sounds, signature lines, signature, figures and things like that. So the first show we dressed like that. Then the second show we dressed more in the '70s and with a bandana like Jimi Hendrix, and they have like one of those Sergeant Pepper coats, and stuff like that.
Nice.
And then we cover Jimi Hendrix and Zeppelin and Deep Purple. And so it's really cool. We really have fun. It's a fun show. We just did a sold out show in Yuma about 3-4 weeks ago, and it was great. And then so then we decided with that same show, because we're finding out that it's kind of limited, because they only really want you to tribute one artist. We were doing all these different various artists, so it was hard to book it consistently. So they said, if the agency started saying, if you book just one artist, we have a better chance of booking you guys. And so we decided that we would go do a Moody Blues tribute, and that's what we're in the process of putting together right now.
Nice.
Our first show is in Yuma in January.
Cool.
With that show.
I just remembered another thing when you played with Dean Martin's son, Ricci Martin. Talk about that.
Yeah, Bobby Z was the keyboard player at that time, and Bobby Figueroa, from who had been with the Beach Boys for about 20 years, great drummer, vocalist, right? And so they recommended me for the gig, because this gentleman named Billy Hinchy. Well, remember
Desi and Billy.
Desi and Billy, yeah, and Billy, he was Billy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Billy had left to go with Brian Wilson. And so, he kind of left Ricky in the lurch. And so both Bobbies recommended me. And so, he had some big show out at Atlantic City at, they were one of those, big casinos that Sinatra used to play at and stuff like that. And so I had like about a week and a half to learn the show, man, and plus all the vocal parts, the backing vocal parts. And so I did it, and so Ricky, loved, instantly loved me. I came in doing the job, and same thing, like what you give me, I'm going to play it, what I mean? So, so if it was a jazz thing, I was playing all the jazz changes and stuff like that, and and which I didn't know that Dean Martin was a big country western fan, so we did a couple of country and western songs.
Was all the material Dean Martin stuff, or did you do some other stuff?
It was all the Dean Martin songbook. So it was great, so I had a good 10-year run with that, with Ricky.
Everybody loves somebody sometime.
That was their closer. But the thing is, that show sold out everywhere we went, and when I first came in, I came in as a sub, right? But then the first show I did with them as a full-time member was in Philly, 50,000 people for an Italian festival.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's like I'm going, wow, I had no idea that this stuff was this big. You know, it's like,
Which reminds me of one other thing we forgot to talk about, and that is, and I'll tell you what reminded me of it. We did a show, you were playing with me, in 2013 at my alma mater, Cal State Los Angeles.
oh, that's right. That was a
And
great.
that was one of my favorite shows ever because it was the first time I did a show where I started out doing a couple of songs alone on the acoustic guitar. And then I brought out Geree Gonzalez and we
Right.
sang my song Mijita with Jerry. And then I
Yeah,
brought Ernie Hernandez out and we did a couple of my other acoustic songs. So we had an
yeah.
acoustic set. Then we brought out the band and it was Ronnie Reyes on guitar. It was this guy, what's his name? Frank Lazaraga on drums. Is that his name? Do you remember him?
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Great
Lizardo.
drummer. Great drummer. And you on keyboard, Louis
Yeah.
Ruiz on bass, one of my favorite bass players. And you, my sax players couldn't make it, and you brought in the sax player from the Ricci Martin band.
No, from Louis Prima. Yeah, Louis Prima Jr.
We didn't even talk about that.
You know, who became a dear friend of ours. You know, 'cause we did a lot of shows together when I was with Ricky Martin, and we had like these dual bills with Louis Prima Jr.
So that's how you know.
Yeah,
So
we
you
would do
brought the guy, and his last name was Palos or something?
yeah, we would do co-headlining together. You know, and that's how I got to know Marco Paulos.
Marco Palos, right?
Great player.
Yeah, he came in, and I think we had one rehearsal,
Yeah,
and man, we kicked ass. That's
it
also
was
on
fun.
YouTube.
It
It's
was a fun show.
Cal State 2013.
Yeah, Marcos is doing. He's out doing his own thing now. He left Louis because he wanted to do his own thing. You know, it's like a swing thing. You know, three horns. It's called Fat Cat Swinger. Really good. You should check him out.
And I remember that show was so great because, first of all, musically it was great. We sounded great. We killed. It's one of the best versions of I'm Brown. That drummer went crazy on it, and we just played it really great. But but also, I just remember because people that showed up to see us, Rick Rosas came, and he had already been playing with Neil Young and Joe Walsh for years. But little did I know that was the last time I ever saw him because he passed away a year later or 6 months later.
Me too, Mark. I feel bad that because you know what? I was doing a show in Vegas with Ricky, you know. We didn't take the whole band because, you know, it was just him and me, you know, and I was his musical director and conductor, you know, because they had a big band, you know, a Vegas band. These guys were all bad boys from, you know, Vegas area. I mean, top show guys, you know, I mean, they played all the top shows and they were on the show and they were the band. And I was conducting Ricky's portion of the show. And so I got a text from Johnny Townsend to let me know that Rick had passed away.
Yeah.
You know, I was
Yeah.
in shock. You know, because I had heard that he had been sick. You know, what I mean, so kind of we kind of like we're expecting it. You know, what I mean, it was not like all of a sudden, you know, it just happened out of nowhere. But I hadn't been able to talk to him. You know, but I had heard that he had been sick for a while. You know, and then Johnny Townsend, you know, texted me, and then I called him, and he told me, you know, what happened with Rick, and
Yeah. I got a call from our producer, the guy who produced the Tango album, Joe Wissert. And Joe Wissert had produced Boz Scaggs, kinds of great stuff. But anyway, he called me to tell me I was stunned. Um, yeah,
well,
that
you
was
had to be hard, Mark. You guys, since it goes back since you guys were kids, man.
yeah, I brought him into the band. I said, if you get a bass, you can join the band. So, theoretically, if that hadn't happened, he may have never played with Neil Young. So that's the way life works, the little twists of fate. But yeah, we brought him into the band in 1964. He played with me for 10 years, all my bands in that period, including the Tango album on A&M and my Capitol singles. And, we did a lot of recording together. And that was the last time I saw him. And Little Ray was in the audience. I don't know if you knew that.
Right, yeah.
A lot of musicians were there. And
Yeah, Ray, I remember seeing Ray there, and he loved the show.
yeah, he did. Yeah. So it was a real special night. And that was one of the first times we played together in years. I think we played one other time I'm remembering. We played at the Santa Fe Springs swap meet. And we backed up, well, you were playing with Ronnie Reyes, uh, Bobby Figueroa was there that day.
Yeah, I remember that.
Leo Valenzuela on bass was playing with me.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, and we played, and you backed me up on Chuco Suaves
Yeah,
and a
that's
couple of
right.
songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, But I think that was the first time we played together since the album we did, the EP in '88.
So could have
But
been.
but that kind of opened the door, and then we did the 2013 show, and now we've been doing a lot of live shows together and recordings. So here we are. We're still cooking. We're still rocking.
We're still doing it, Mark. Grateful.
Yeah,
Because you know what? There's a lot of guys that can't.
yeah, yeah.
It's sad. I mean, a lot of great musicians that I've seen, that have left us, or are incapacitated that
Oh yeah.
can't
So
play no
many,
more.
so
You
many.
know?
Um, should we talk about let's talk about the incident at Cathedral City recently when we played.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, let's talk about it. I was questioning whether I should talk about it. So, about a month after the big show on September 6th at La Plaza de Cultura y Artes, um, I got a gig at the Cathedral City where I live, um, Civic Center, and it was for Hispanic Heritage Month. And I brought out the nucleus of that show. We had Steve Alanis on sax, you on keyboard, John Valenzuela on guitar, um,
Mark Sanchez.
Art Sanchez on bass, and Ray Rodriguez on drums. The problem is it was 100 degrees,
And you
and
weren't hydrating.
yeah, and I didn't drink enough water. And it was on the steps of the city hall, coincidentally on Lalo Guerrero Avenue, Avenida Lalo Guerrero, named after my dad, and his statue right across the street.
That's cool.
Okay, that's the setting. And we were only to play an hour, and we were going to pretty much do the set we did at that previous concert. Problem was, we arrived there an hour early, got set up in the sun. There was no shade, there was no covering whatsoever. And and then after things were set up, we were sitting around in the heat, so we were in the heat for an hour before we started. Now we have an hour set, and we got to put out the energy to do a set like that. And as the set moved along, as we got to about, let's say, the 50-minute mark of the set, I started feeling I was running out of energy. I was feeling a little weak, and I was starting to question whether I could get through the whole hour. We still had about a couple of songs left. So I did the next song. Then we got to the finale, I'm Brown. And I sang the first two verse choruses, got through the first solo sections. And then I felt, I don't think I'm going to make it, man. The first step was I unplugged my guitar, and I thought, I'm not going to do my last solo, the ones going out. I'm just going to see if I could sing the last chorus, and get through it. And so I started to sing the chorus, and I started really feeling like I might collapse. So I just walked off the stage without explanation. And you guys were playing, and what did you think?
Well, you know what it was, Mark? I was watching you, and you were teetering like this.
Really?
Yeah. And me and Art are looking at you and going, "What's going on, bro?" Because Art and I were right next to each other. You go, "I don't know, man, what's going on with Mark, right?" And you're throwing the cable and just walking off, and we're playing, and we're going, "What's going on?" And then we just see you kind of like, just looking for somewhere to sit, right? And so you sat down and you were
I
just
sat
like
in the back in the shade,
that, and I'm going,
and you
okay.
guys just continued the song without me.
So, at that point, I said, okay, I got to take over here. And so I conducted the band so we could get the heck out.
And I looked over at you and eventually
Yeah,
go,
you gave me the nod. Yeah, you gave me the nod, and I conducted the band out.
right. So I was sitting there just feeling weak, and it just so happened that three Cathedral City firemen were there in uniform watching the show. And they came up to me and they said, "Hey, would you like us to take your vitals?" And I said, "Sure." I didn't feel that horrible. Like I felt once I sat down, I felt like I didn't feel like I was going to faint or anything, but I didn't feel great. But I was sitting there and I thought it would pass. So I said, "Go ahead." So they took my blood pressure and they said, "It's extremely low right now. I recommend you go to the hospital." So I said, "Okay."
Yeah, you didn't look good at all.
So they put me on a stretcher.
I
They
remember
put me
that.
in an ambulance. They drove me over to Desert Hospital. They gave me an IV on the way, and by the time we got to the hospital, my blood pressure was pretty much normalized, uh, and I was feeling pretty good. Um, but the funny part was my friend and videographer, Tony Reyes, was there videotaping the show. So he got all that on tape. He got
Oh,
them, he got them giving me my vitals tests. He got me on the stretcher. He got me being put into the
that's,
ambulance. And I laughed when I saw the video because, you think here I was in that condition where they wanted me to go to the hospital, and I'm sitting up in the stretcher telling one of the musicians, "Don't forget, my amp's there, two guitars, my pedal board. Please don't forget
we
anything."
told
Man,
you we'll get everything
I'm
for you.
barking orders as I'm getting put in the ambulance. And thank God, you guys collected all my stuff,
Yeah, we made sure we put it all together, all in one,
and
bundle.
Steve Alanis was
And
nice
then
enough to
Steve
take it to
said,
my
I'll take
house.
it. I could take it to him, so.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and nothing was lost. But I was in the hospital for about an hour and a half. They gave me all kinds of tests, blood tests, EKG, and gave me, some more IV. Maybe an hour and a half later, I walked out 100%, but it's all on video.
One for the history book for you.
Yeah, and it's on his YouTube channel, Jammin' Classics.
Oh, that's funny.
And I haven't put it on mine yet. I haven't decided whether I want it on my YouTube channel, but it's on there. But
Yeah,
here's the thing. So later I thought about it. I thought, man, I literally could have died because I really believe if I hadn't unplugged and walked off, I might have fainted. I might have collapsed. And if I did, I might have hit my head on the cement. So theoretically, I literally could have
at least you would have hurt yourself really bad.
really bad. But I thought, well, if I had collapsed and conked out, it would have been kind of poetic. He croaks singing his anthem song, I'm Brown, on Lalo Guerrero Avenue next to the statue. Boy, that's poetic. What a way to go, right? And I told my brother, I said, hey, man, man, he goes, well, maybe you should try it again.
That's
A great way
funny.
to go out.
Make it part of the act.
Yeah, oh, right. Maybe we could just make it part of that. But it was very dramatic, and I'm glad he got it on video because it's a little piece of history,
And the show was going great.
and I learned my lesson. If it's hot, drink a lot of water and also demand that you get covering. In fact, the people that organized it said, man, we learned our lesson. They're never going to do that again. Well, even Ray Rodriguez told me he was starting to feel weak himself. I don't know
Yeah,
if
he
you
told me
felt
that.
weird, but it kind of drained all of us.
Yeah, I knew, I said, yeah, I'm going to start drinking my water. So I kept pumping the water, so I didn't
Yeah,
have that problem.
yeah, yeah. So that was our little adventure there, and we saved it for last. Maybe a lot of people aren't going to watch it this long, so only a certain number of people will hear this story. But it's a good story. So man, thanks for doing this, man. A lot of great information, and you've had quite a career, and you're a very talented guy, and I'm happy we've
But
worked together so much.
think about it, Mark. We're blessed, man. We're so blessed that we have been able to do something that we love so much. That's our passion, and we're still doing it.
And make a living.
I'm grateful. Believe me, I'm eternally grateful for it.
Yeah, I'm very
I told
grateful.
you, mine was just a fluke, man. I never knew that I would become a musician for the rest of my life.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm just grateful that I made a living doing music and music-related things my whole life. So
Exactly.
I feel very blessed about that. So yeah, man. So that's it. So thanks for doing it, and I'll talk to you soon. I'm sure we're going to be working again soon.
And we'll do something soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay, man. Thanks,
All
and I'll
right.
talk to you soon.
You take care, Mark.
Okay, bye-bye.